with something like ADHD or what we would consider to be a mental illness, right? You still have choice, right? So I live with ADHD, but I get to choose X. That doesn't change. We're not defined by our circumstances, and I think that the coaching that we just did showed that too. Jacqueline has started. My sister's name is Jackie. Jacqueline has started internalizing that experience or that label of I'm hungry, and that's the same thing for someone that lives with mental illness. Mental illness does not mean that you are not capable. Maybe maybe you don't have the ability to do certain things, or some things are much harder for you than they may be for others, and that within itself can be crippling to a person's mental, your psyche. But it still doesn't change that you have the ability to challenge and stretch yourself in these same ways, and that capacity for you may not look like Jacqueline's, but that capacity, developing your capacity, will be right for you. There you go, Ryan. Hmm. It's gonna sound a little cliche, but you go inside. You do. Like you go, it's your mind and your heart, right? And most people are not connected to that. If you're not connected to your mind and heart, it makes it very difficult to live a sustainable life that shows that you have capacity. Now, I'm not saying that because from a developmental standpoint, right, we all chase success and all of those things, right? I think that we just today we have like a little mixed generations who are not necessarily chasing success, which you need to go and do something, because that too will impact your mental health at some point. But getting in tune with self is really important, and I think that that's what makes me a really good coach and or therapist, because you have these theoretical models and I can grasp them and understand them, but I also know that correlation does not mean causation all the time, right? So for me, it's just information, it's another tool. The practical knowledge, which makes us all human, is where I tend to go to, but it's so gray, it's abstract. And most people are not okay with discomfort, uncertainty, and change and all of those things. So it's hard to support people from that level. And I think that that is, I'm like scratching my head because I'm like, want to give myself credit, but I think that that's probably like a gift of mine. Even if you take away the education, because my brain just pulls it all together in a way to where I can then connect the practical with the theoretical stuff as well. Hmm. It resonates. Yep. So I do. So I've always been told that I was the kid before my time, and you just need a little experience, right? I've always been told as a kid you need to stay in a child's place because I always thought that I knew better than adults did. I thought that adults, like people that were raised, they don't know what they're doing. And I always tell people. So my story that because what most people don't know. I always tell, can I curse? If I curse, will like or not curse? Should I not curse? All right. I always tell people that I went from shit to sugar, and then when I got the sugar, I was like, oh gosh, let me go back to the shit because I can do well in some shit, right? And the shit piece was the typical. The black girl grew up in the projects, loses her mom to an overdose. Now she moves with her dad, who has his own family. Like, don't have much. My dad is a, mechanic, but my dad is a realist too. My dad is not the type of person like you can go to your dad and be like, Dad, I smoked weed yesterday, and he'll be like, okay, how'd you like it? And you're like, oh shoot. I'm like, I don't know if this is like parenting or not, but my dad has always created that space for you to be who you are. And if I use my mom, because I did get 11 years with my mom was a 17-year-old. She had me when she was 17 years old, no high school diploma. By the time that my mom, I think she was 30 or 31 when she died, but she was really big on education. So that 11 years, that imprint of education was there for me. And I don't know if you saw my video today, I talk about survival mode. Like, when you are forced to have to learn to survive, you don't necessarily appreciate it because your sense of resiliency is built through necessity. You don't get to like learn the life lessons that are going to just come just from being human. And then if you fast forward to, I was actually going to go into the military, and I had an uncle who had ended up doing very well for himself. And he was like, we're changing the game, you're going to college. And I end up going to college. And when I graduated from college, my uncle had his company. He said, you're going to come in, you can come and work for me. And it was hell. Like, when I say hell, hell in the sense of, I thought that because now I'm privileged. I don't know anything about privilege. I thought that privilege meant privileged people don't have adversity. I'm just being honest. I thought that that did not exist. I struggled tremendously because the nepotism was one thing, but you had to learn to navigate a very complex terrain. And when in living in shit, like everybody knew the rules, right? Like, you don't let people disrespect you. There wasn't a lot of complexity. It was black and white. And then I go and I work for my uncle, and you're having to learn so many different things. Well, first, I didn't have a strong sense of self, right? Because this is a change. This is my first time really going out into corporate. My uncle is a businessman. He doesn't have time to sit there and coddle me all the time. It's like sink or swim. But I know that he loves me, right? So you're navigating that most of the time feeling unloved. And then you have people, because I didn't know what microaggressions or any of those things was. It was very hard for me to play victim because I had privilege, right? So I've had people curse me out for my uncle, and then you're like, can we fire him? He's like, no, well, this is my top performing executive, and you're gonna have to figure out how to navigate that. So, or when you would find situations, because everybody talks about the boss, right? Like, this is I didn't know my capacity was expanding in this sense, but all right, if I want to be a really good HR professional, I'm going to have to learn to listen to people talk about my uncle without taking it personal. Like, I'm going to have to learn to go into these meetings when my uncle is talking to me as his, well, at one point, just, his HR person versus his VP of HR, and then still be able to go home and you say that you want to go and celebrate grandma's birthday. I'm not going today. Like, I had to navigate all of that. Like, and then we were in the internet space, so we worked with the military. It was predominantly male. I mean, I can recall my uncle and I arguing over he wanted to do the European style bathrooms, and I'm like, woman, we want to have a separate bathroom. We're not in Europe. We're in the U.S. And like you start to realize that life does not discriminate with its lessons. And that was a hard pill to swallow for me, especially as a black woman, because it's like, well, what are you going to use to play victim? Because you're seeing so many different things, like diversity, right? We hire who the hell we wanted to hire, right? You hire based off of comfort, what feels good, and sometimes just your confirmation biases. So I didn't know how I was being shaped, right? I knew how I was being shaped in the shit. I didn't know how I was being shaped in the sugar. So I struggled tremendously. Like, and I think that I didn't have the language then, but for sure, anxiety, depression, you name it, I had it because I can remember times where I'm like migraines and I'm going to get CAT scans because of all of the things that we talked about. I didn't have the capacity. It was a change. So I think that that's what people are getting. Like, I like to say, like, I'm from the streets because I am. But I also know what it's like to have as well. So you get a very balanced and nuanced perspective from me, coupled from my life experience and being able to bridge the education as well. And I ended up quitting too. I ended up quitting because I wouldn't be here talking to you. So that was a struggle within itself. Like, how do you stay true to who you are, especially because for us, it's like, we get an opportunity to create generational wealth. Like, everybody should want to be a part of it, and having to walk in every day and feel like you're living someone else's story or their truth was really hard for me too, because if you don't come from anything and somebody makes it, like, you do that, you should do that thing. So I really struggled. That was probably the hardest time of my life. Like, I felt like it trumped losing my mom to an overdose, and I watched her do it. I watched her lose her life. Like, becoming the therapy term, they say parentification. Like, I felt like I became a mom early because I had a younger sister, so I constantly was protecting her. When I look back on it, the grand scheme of things, all of those things were really easy for me. Like, it came natural, leaning into responsibility, and then this new world just, oh my gosh, it shook me to my core because I felt very isolated. I felt misunderstood. You would try to come home and talk to your friends about it, but they're like, girl, shut up. Like, you work for your uncle. You ain't got no real problems. So it was just, that was just what it was. So I think that when people listen to me, you're getting all of that. You're getting the girl from the streets, and then you're getting the girl that know what it's like to have too. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. Suffer trauma or release yourself. Okay, I like that. Like, I like. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know about that until I went to that mental health program. I don't remember how I came across it, or maybe it was either the mental health program or when I was still trying to make myself stay to work for for my uncle's company. I think I was at the School of Wharton for an HR certification. And there was this lady there, and I was just so in awe of how she moved and handled the room. And she used to talk about like overcoming a lot. And she talked about post traumatic growth, and I may have started looking at it on my own. And I realized that I had not had any therapy. I didn't have any therapy from like the childhood stuff, and I had no therapy like dealing with the family stuff, because it was like, secrets. Like, you don't want to go and tell people like your business, because I wasn't mature as I am now to understand like what was happening. So I realized, I'm like, wow, like, I'm becoming a different person. And that's what post traumatic growth is. It's this transformation when you can take all of your experiences and it turns into something beautiful, to where you truly have an appreciation for how life has tested you, how life has tried to tear you down, and you did not, whether you didn't fall victim to it all. Yeah, I had a bunch of bad days, right? But I didn't fall victim to it. And that's what post traumatic growth disorder, it acknowledges that trauma is perceived, and I think that we often miss that piece. Like there are some things that without a doubt we'll be like, "Oh, that's traumatic." But there's also trauma when we say, or even that too, if it's complex trauma, people's perceptions can change, right? That's why we talk about neuroplasticity and how your brain can be rewired and all those things, which is why it's important to challenge your thinking in the way that I do on social media, because that was happening for me and I didn't know that it was happening, but I was realizing that the like the forgiveness for my mom had like dissipated, and I didn't know how it had happened. But I became an adult. I started to understand how hard life was, and I became a mom. And I was like, well, I'm not perfect either. Like I have the ability to cause pain, and it's not because I yelled at my child versus my mom dying from an overdose. Pain is pain. It is pain, and a lot of times we like to rank it, right? Well, you did this and this was really bad. No, pain is pain. Like we don't have to make a separation or create this distinction between a lot of things in life. And I can now see how things are interconnected. So the post traumatic growth is like this. This is the transformation. This is, the quell that you get, or RaQuel. My nickname is Quell. Yeah. Let me share something. I was really nervous about this podcast because I was like, I started making a label, right? I was like, real estate. First of all, I got my real estate license and I hated real estate. Like I wanted my money. I was like, I'm not gonna drive you to 50 houses and you tell me that you didn't like that toilet. Like I can't do this. It wasn't for me. Like I actually quit on a client. Like seeing a house, they had an attitude. I was like, I pulled off and left them right at the showing. So don't judge me. That we're always growing, but I found out that was not for me, and eventually it got me here. But I was anxious about getting on this podcast because I'm like real estate, and then I saw the 15 point. Is that what it's 15 point? Yeah, I was like, I don't know how it all ties together. And it ended up being a beautiful conversation. So I am so glad that you stepped out on uncertainty because I probably wouldn't have engaged in like real estate. Like, but yeah. Yeah, so I am on Instagram primarily. Raquel, the capacity expert, and there's an underscore under each one of those. Raquel underscore the. But if you just put in Raquel, the capacity expert, you can find me. I also have an ebook on my Instagram page as well, where I kind of share a little bit of my story while also offering tools and support to navigate responsibility, change, discomfort, and uncertainty. So you can grab it for $27.